He's unabated. That's the new word, unabated. That's kind of too big a word. That's like mayonnaise. I'm sure that's the biggest word I know.
Hello, everybody, and welcome on into another week of college football props here on Unabated Sports. I'm Thomas Viola. He's Chris Kay. And Chris, welcome back. We missed you last week. Or am I in a time
2 weeks ago?
2 weeks
Two
ago.
weeks ago. I was like, wait, where was I last week?
Am I in a time warp here? Because it was,
Shoot.
it was Colin 2 weeks ago. Then last week we had no Colin and Seth joining us. This week, back to all of our normal programming here. Seth, thankfully, everyone there is okay and safe from the hurricane. So they are back in business. We will be hearing what they have to say from a more qualitative perspective later on in the show here. But Chris, how are we feeling, my friend? Admittedly, I mean, we're not here to sugarcoat it. Not the best week last week, but we're here to bounce back.
Yeah, a little bit of a down week. Certainly have spent like a ridiculous amount of time to make sure that everything that we're doing is accurate as possible. We're releasing a few less teams because we're not going to take chances on some of these different injury situations. And we don't have Texas on the list yet for those that are looking at that projection notes section. But I suspect at some point we'll release them and we'll let you guys know. It's too big of a game not to do it, but this Isaiah Bond stuff really can throw a wrench in some of those receiver numbers. But yeah, we're good. Week 8. We're like kind of halfway through the season, but there's also bowl season that lasts like 45 days or something like that. So we have a lot of weeks to make up for last week for sure.
Yeah, we have plenty of time, and hey, bowl season is going to be fun too. Oh man, we are going to be diving into some projections on bowl season. That's going to be very interesting to talk about when that time comes. Marwell's in the chat already saying no catchy name in the title. You know, I feel like Unabated college football props, it kind of just, it rolls. I like it. It rolls. I think we finally can just be like, you know, we're comfortable in our own skin. We put it on. We tried it on. We're walking around. We're going to walk out of the store with it. I think we're ready for it. What do you think, Chris?
I think it's good. We're here for the numbers, not necessarily the title. But yeah, I think next offseason is when we really kind of game plan it. But yeah, we're good. We're good. Let's work on the props. Let's not work on the title. But yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah. And before we get into anything here, moving forward, I want to get some housekeeping out of the way here because I want to remind you guys that we will be doing an NBA AMA to get you ready for the association this season. Justin Fan, John Rodabaugh, and Stephen Byron Keach, SBK himself, are going to get you ready for the 2024 season here. Monday, October 21st, 4 p.m. Eastern time in the Discord. Be there or be square. It is your choice there. I highly recommend being there. Ask your questions. Get ready for the association this season with them. And get ready to use the new NBA player projections that we have here at Unabated. We are so excited for them. You can get your package starting Monday. We have a cornucopia of options for you from $59 for a week, $200 for a month, or $999 for the entire NBA season. You can get the whole package right there. And if you're a premium member, we're throwing you a little bit of a bone. $599 will get you the full season if you are already a premium subscriber. That starts Monday, and you're going to have a whole week to redeem that special as well. But hey, we are here to talk some college football props. Chris, how about we get into it? By the way, that Georgia-Texas game, going to be lit. That entire weekend is popping off there, but it is incredibly dangerous because you know what else is in Texas, in Austin that same weekend, this weekend?
It's F1, right?
Yeah. I absolutely horrible to be putting Formula One and Georgia players in the same city.
Yeah, you couldn't pick a worse combination. Did you see that the Bulldog did not travel to the game, making it the first Georgia Bulldog to be maybe limited in travel with all the stuff that's going on?
Then we're going to talk a lot more on the show about how that is going to impact the projections here for the Dogs this week. Of course, BJ saying, I missed out on you guys last week down here in Florida. My Airbnb was booked to the max. I hope you're not kidding, but I know you probably are. Glad that everyone is safe and sound down there. And of course, North Carolina also still reeling from the hurricanes. The only plug that I could possibly have is Red Cross or whatever charity you want to give to. If you have a good week, maybe think about some hurricane relief, throwing some good karma into the hurricane relief there. But I don't have anything to officially plug there. Chris, enough banter. Let's get into it. Talk to me. This is NFL props. Let me switch over. All right. let's get going. Where are we going for our first game here?
Let's start with Duke, Florida State. This is one of those games. I want to say the projected, like the implied total is like 23-20 or something pretty low scoring. And it makes complete sense to me, right? I think Duke is not the most flashy, high-flying offense. Florida State has maybe no skill players anyone can name off the top of their head. And they're on a second quarterback. DJU, thankfully, is gone. Instead, we get Brock Glenn. So we really like the under here on Brock Glenn. He's got limited action in his career. I mean, I think it's a few seasons and really a 4.8 career yards per target. It's just not great. He wasn't great last year when he had a couple NFL wideouts. So I don't know why it would be any better this season. And I think it took him 40 to 43 passes last week to hit over, that like 230 or 240 yards. So I wouldn't be intimidated by that higher number last week because I just don't see that being the game plan or the game script this week. So I think the under on Glenn is a really good option in tonight's game.
Yeah, I mean, we're here for some passing yard unders. DJU may be gone, but that does not mean you can kill the man, but you can't kill the idea. Passing yard unders for Florida State still there. And hey, at least Florida may be getting battered by hurricanes and terrible college football, but at least you can very clearly tell that the ACC refs have gotten the memo. Miami is making the playoff in the top 4.
Yeah, Miami's making the playoff. There's no doubt about it. Any review is not going the other team's way. But we also have some receiving unders with Glenn. A little, I'll say maybe a tad of volatility here because we do like the under on all of them. I think really Hakeem Williams is a former 4-star that I think he's a true freshman that just started off banged up. Hasn't really shown a ton, but he's getting some snaps now that everybody else has been underwhelming. Douglas is probably their receiver 1, but even then, he hasn't had the best of seasons, obviously. And so he's outperformed Malik Benson in my eyes, who came into the season as the receiver 1. I think all of these are good unders. Like I'd said, right, a career like 5 yards per target for Glenn. So one thing to note, right, like if we're going to see a low yards per target, they got to get a lot of volume, and we're not seeing that. I think the highest the receiver's gotten in terms of targets in the game the last 3 weeks, even with a 40-plus attempt game last week, has been 6. So not really filtering targets to one player. Like a USC, they'll filter 8 to 10 targets to a random guy in a game. And then the next game, it's a different guy. So it creates some risk. But that's not necessarily the case here at Florida State. They just give everybody about 3 to 5 targets, and you got to hope they make a big play on it to hit some of these overs.
Yeah. So instead, we look towards the under markets here, and I mean, we're definitely seeing more, like you said, on Douglas and Williams here than Malik Benson as far as what we're specifically looking for. It's just so frustrating to me when we have an offense like this, and so you're looking at it and you're like, okay, everyone is hovering in that 30 to 40 yard range, and it's just, all right, who do I take?
Yeah, it's like, which one do I want to go with? It's really, there's not a great answer for it. They all kind of hover around that same receiver 1 to 3 range. There's no one that really jumps out at you as like a superstar talent. Hakeem Williams, maybe because we haven't seen him for a full season because he's a freshman, maybe we avoid that when we instead look at Douglas, a guy that's had multiple years of mediocre to average performance. Malik Benson, who's been underwhelming, that's a 2% edge. So I probably would avoid that. And I would just really target maybe coin flip Douglas or Williams, or maybe split a unit or whatever your typical size is on, one on Douglas or half and half. Right. But I think the theme of under makes a ton of sense. So whatever your confidence level is, I would say go with it, because this is one that, this is not released. I don't think we're releasing this to the subs because of the running back situation. It's just kind of murky. It's not worth dealing with. But I feel good about the unders.
Yeah. Jim, Matthew G, first off, saying hit the edit button. We got you there so you could see the receptions. By the way, guys, if it is blurry on your screen, it's not on mine. So please let me know so I can zoom in more. We want to make sure that you can see everything. And Jim Robinson here saying, any desire to SGP, the FSU quarterback wide receiver props unders on both are definitely correlated. I mean, they are. It's really just going to come down to how the black box prices it. You want to be careful with that, right?
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? It's not like we have them for a ton of yards, but they don't have like a ton of options. It wouldn't surprise me if one of these guys goes over. And the number is just so small is the problem, right? Like this isn't
Yeah.
like an Illinois situation where it's 200 yards for Altmaier, but his top two receivers are in the 50s. That's a little bit different. If you think they're going to get shut down, you have some wiggle room. But I don't know if I would do all three together. If you were doing like underdog or prize picks, I certainly wouldn't do all three together. You kill the payout, and the correlation is just a little bit almost too much considering the number is around 30, 37, 40.
Yeah. I definitely wouldn't take all of them there because like the math just isn't mathing. But Jim Robinson also sent Glenn and Hakeem plus 180 to the under same game parlay at FanDuel. I mean, shooting from the hip, off the cuff, math doesn't seem bad there. But
Yeah.
All
so
right.
on the other side, I think the rush number for Star Thomas is a good one. So this is a situation where Star Thomas, a former New Mexico State running back, he didn't come into the season as the starter. I think it was Jaquez Moore. He got hurt. He really hasn't played much in the last 5 games. And what we've seen is Star Thomas get a ton of usage, basically like 55 to 60% or higher in the last 5 games. And really in the last 2 games, that number's been around 75% usage. So this is a guy that is going to get volume. It's really just about effectiveness of Duke's offensive line, of their just game plan. That's not really something, sometimes that's a little bit too much in the weeds. You kind of have to just go on usage and some of these baselines that are created by our models. And I think the over makes complete sense, especially at like 78.5, where you have a little bit of wiggle room compared to that like 80.5. You get a couple yards extra boost there. So I like the over. He could get up. I think he had 30 carries in one of the last 2 games. So like the usage is heavy. And this is kind of one of those grinded out games. So I like the over on Star Thomas.
BJ also saying everything looks good on my end, but I'm underwater. Yeah, he's watching the show in his new waiter pants with his new pet alligator down there in Florida. But yeah, I mean, it's not like Duke is going to be an air raid offense either. And come on, when you have a player named Star Thomas, this is incredible plus EV information I'm giving out here. This might be the most alpha thing you ever hear from Unabated. A name like Star Thomas, you can't possibly not feed him the ball.
You can't go wrong with giving it to Star. I mean, it's written in the stars. It makes sense. It's there.
Exactly. By the way, don't forget, if you are joining us here, if you're on Twitter, please head over to YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, please make sure that you hit that subscribe button and that like button too. Smash them buttons. We're at 1,200 subscribers right now. I have been reliably informed here by Chris that if we hit 1,400 on this show, I will be doing the entire Derek Carty show at noon for NFL props, shirtless. Which it's going to be an absolutely wild time. And let me tell you, the temperature in Vegas, like we officially hit winter today. Yesterday was 85. Today is 50. And I have not turned the heat on at my house yet. So these things can cut class right now. It's going to be a great show.
I hope you haven't been skipping arm day, bicep, tries, chest.
Oh, come on. You think I've been skipping the arm day,
good.
my
Well,
friend?
then
I've been
you're
nonstop
set. You're
at
set.
the gym.
Yeah, you're good. You're in a good spot. I gave it I don't know. I won't say a hefty number, but 200 on it. We have 1,200 already. 200 is a pretty big number. So I gave you a chance.
You did. I mean, I'd be thrilled if we get there. Absolutely. I'm on board for this. And I'll even extend it out. If we hit it during the Derek show, tops popping off there. I'll give you
Sorry,
that.
Derek. Give me a second. I need to take off the shirt.
Yeah. 2 Nichols saying 50 isn't cold. We already got snow out here. Let me tell you, I went to school at Syracuse. I cannot believe there was a time when 55 would be the temperature and we would be saying, oh man, summer's finally here. We're going out. We're throwing the football on the quad today. It's going to be a great day. We're out in shorts. Now, after 120-degree summers, I'm like, 50 degrees is too much here. I'm out. Clips, look, you guys don't understand. I'm dealing with 120 out here. This is absolutely it. All right. Let's move it on right now. Where are we going next? I assume we're done with the Duke Florida State game.
Yeah, we're done with this one. I think Purdue Oregon is going to be an interesting game. I think people typically think, oh yeah, I think it's at Purdue. Playing Purdue, you have a lot of previous experience with Ohio State struggling to them and some of these Rondale Moore teams beating highly ranked teams. I don't think that's going to be the case here. I think they've made a quarterback change, maybe partially due to injury to Hudson Card, and now we have Ryan Brown. He is a I were to describe him, I mean, he's really kind of a battering ram. He's kind of like Josh Allen, but like not good at throwing the football, right? Just sacrifices the body, runs a lot. I'm a little surprised at where this number is passing wise. Maybe it's because of last week's game against Illinois, where they absolutely exploded in the fourth quarter to make the comeback and force overtime. But this is just high for a guy that is not a passer and he loves to run. There's a little bit of injury situation, maybe. I mean, he ran it 17 times last week. He had one game last year where he played in and he ran it 21 times and he didn't even play the full game. In that game, he was like 10 for 14 for 100 yards. So nothing impressive there. It was at Northwestern. So I'm a little surprised by the number. They don't really have like a go-to receiver like a Rondale Moore to save him. So I really like the under here of 179.5. Makes a ton of sense to me. And this is going to be they project a blowout, and I wouldn't be surprised at all. It's like a 27.5 line. So the game script's bad for us betting unders, but Purdue doesn't want to throw it. So I would be shocked if they threw it 30 plus times.
And what about the other side there with Dillon Gabriel? I know we're not seeing too much of an edge on the projection, but we're expecting a blowout here. I mean, total is 61 and Purdue's a 30-point dog, as Bill M points out. So game script does say passing for Purdue, but is there a possibility that they pull Dillon Gabriel here, especially after a tough, hard-fought win over Ohio State last week?
It's certainly possible. We've docked him a little bit for the blowout, which we always do, right? Anytime there's a spread of like 23, 24 and a half, or 24, 25, we start to take that into account for sure.
It's just all priced in already.
Yeah, but it's priced in, I think. But it wouldn't be surprising, right? Like Jordan James is an incredible running back. If you want to switch over to running back here, rushing yards, his line has moved kind of back and forth, if I remember correctly, but he's incredible. I mean, he could easily hit his over of 114.5. Like that's a steep, big line. So it's just a matter of, who gets the scoring, right? Who does the damage on the big plays? Is it Jordan James? Is it Noah Whittington, the running backs, or is it a guy like Gabriel? I probably, if you wanted some juice in the game, I certainly wouldn't say no to under on Gabriel. If you're kind of playing that blowout, 300 yards is still a pretty big number, but it's not one I would just kind of blindly bet and move on. I think I would rather look at some of these other ones instead.
Mm-hmm. Anthony Klinker saying he'll be at the Purdue-Oregon game. Stay away. Let me know what the weather situation is going to be like over there. Meanwhile, Schuyler Distel Zywig, if I nailed that, give me props. And if I didn't, don't tell me. But he says, how do you feel about under 29.5 attempts for Brown? Or do you like the yards better? I mean, if you can find a passing attempts market for him, because we can't.
That is a tough one. He had 26 attempts last week, and the game was it was like 48-50. The game script, I said they didn't want to pass, but that's a little bit close to it was at 26, is it 30 attempts?
Mm-hmm.
We said, that's just too probably tight of a number. I'd way rather look at the pass yards instead.
Yeah, because we don't anticipate a big passing game, but we anticipate them being down pretty hot, pretty far, as Bill M points out there. Like, they're going to need to pass. It's just we'd rather bank on those passes not being successful than not happening.
Exactly. I mean, Oregon's really kind of like a top 40 defense. Nothing super impressive, but like I'd rather just assume, bet on the fact that they're not going to be good rather than, attempts where there's zero skill involved. It's really purely game script, which doesn't play in our favor there.
Daniel Colpoy says Whittington projections.
Are there any lines for Noah Whittington? He's a little bit tougher to project because he has gone back and forth. We have him at about 7.8 attempts for 48 yards, but that one's a little bit tougher because, if this game stays close enough for just long enough, he might not get much run, period. He's not going to get a ton of run in close games. I don't think we see any lines out there for him. Maybe you have some other, PPH or something like that where you can see it, but I don't think I would play around with Noah Whittington. I think I'd look at other props instead.
Mm-hmm. All right. Do we want to head to any other markets here, or are we ready to maybe peruse a different game?
I would say Maccabee is interesting because I'm a little surprised at the number of 38.5,
Mhm.
but they want to run the football. So if you think that they're not going to be game script dependent, then I think you like this bet. If you think that they're going to be a little bit more pass happy, I would avoid. Maccabee is going to get 10 to 14 carries. Brown is going to get a bunch of usage on the ground, probably 40 to 50%. So it's really, what does Reggie Love do? We have Reggie Love at half the usage of Maccabee. So some slight risk there. But it's not the best of options tonight. I think I would rather look at these receiving yards and pick out something there.
All right, let's take a look into that market here because there are a couple decent choices here.
Yeah, so Max Clare is the tight end for Purdue. He had a huge game last week on 8 targets against Illinois. The numbers like the under. I can see it. He had the one big game, but besides that, he's been kind of a comfortable 4 for 35 type guy. And I don't suspect that Brown's the guy that's going to unlock him. And I'm a big Clare fan. Instead, I think these receiver unders are really, I shouldn't say instead, Clare's a good under there, but like Tibbs and Edgerine, those are solid unders as well. These are guys that are going to need a little bit of help from Brown to be successful. You get the line is around 30 to 35-ish or whatever it is. But I think I'd pick one of those out and go under there as well. I think those are to play just kind of like FSU, right? Like we like the under on the quarterback. They have a mix of guys that are just guys. And I think an under makes a ton of sense, just wholly for Purdue's pass offense.
Mm-hmm. BJ saying, yes, cover Maccabee, please. I mean, I think we covered him pretty well already, right?
Yeah, I think he's going to get the 12 carries or so. He'll get a couple touches in the pass game like we see here. We have 1.5 for 11 yards. This is something to definitely note for all the different games and the teams that we release. Some of these running backs, 1% on a target share usage is going to completely change the projection. So just those are really volatile. You might be better off just staying away unless you have a personal lean. You maybe are a big Purdue fan, so you maybe have kind of that extra information of watching every single snap. Bless your heart. But, be careful with those. It says 11% edge, but that number is 9.5, right? Like all it takes is one target and it's blown up, right? Yeah. One of the interesting aspects of this game is Trayshawn Holden. Did you watch the Ohio State game?
I caught some of it, but the Syracuse game was on at the same time, so I was flipping back and forth.
I commend people that watch their own teams over like the insane matchup. You got to get multiple TVs, Tom. Or
I had the multi-box set up. It's just, I'm paying attention.
You're way more on the volume too. I got you.
Shout out, by the way, to YouTube TV's multi-box feature.
It's incredible.
It's truly, truly mind-blowingly impressive that they have something so simple, so completely easy to do, and they still manage to completely screw it up because it's like you can do the multi-box and you can create your own now, which is exactly what we want, but they somehow still manage to make it so you can't make the multi-box you want to make. All right, rant over.
It's it's so easy and simple to conceptualize, and they did it, but there's still a level of like, why can't we just get to this point?
Yeah.
But yeah, so Holden's interesting. We like the over, but this Oregon room is really, really sketchy because Holden spit on a player and was kicked out of the game, which is odd. Mario Anderson did that for Memphis a few weeks back. So we don't really know what's going to come to it. Dan Lanning basically said, the head coach basically said, we're going to handle this internally. So is that like the Kirby Smart, you run a couple extra hills? Does he sit the first quarter? So some of these receiver props are a little bit risky. I think the one that's not risky is this Terrence Ferguson line because he's their tight end. Because that's not going to really play a part in, snaps and routes run by receivers. He's a tight end. We've had success with Ferguson overs the whole season. He's got a 15-yard catch in every game. He's not going to be he had 8 targets last week with Holden out, but he's not going to get that consistently. You're looking at 4 to 5 targets, but thankfully that line is 36.5 on FanDuel. Get a 15-yard catch, a 10-yard catch, and we can get there pretty easily on 4 targets. Nice thing, too, is you have Dylan Gabriel. Talk about quality of target. That's an incredible quality of target from Dylan Gabriel, a guy that's been around forever and had successful 3,000-yard seasons, multiples of them, right? So catching passes 3 to 5 targets from Gabriel is much different than a guy like Ryan Brown or Malik Murphy, where two or three of those could be uncatchable, right? So I like the Ferguson over here. If you have news, you have a vibe, you have some sort of insider info that Holden's not going to be suspended at all, I think that 13, almost 14% edge is true. I would hit that. And I would avoid the Tez under there just because he's an incredible talent and he's going to get 7, 8, 9 targets. I'd rather just instead look at maybe the Holden if you have a lean or Ferguson with the over because he's the tight end.
Now, I'm trying to look right now and find something for us to spot with this news on Trayshawn Holden here. My biggest piece of advice, like start looking at some of the obscure beat writers. Look at this. Look at the student newspaper, the campus newspaper, because that's one that people might gloss over, but one of those reporters could be really intrepid and get on one of the stories. Pay attention to that kind of stuff. That might be where you find the edge on this particular game.
Yeah, I mean, once the news, if there is news that breaks, we will certainly have it. But also, some of these different beat guys, beat men and women out there are gonna report something, and it'll be popped. It'll be quick. That's where you can take advantage of a bad line like a 35.5. That's purely there because there's some kind of indecision of what's going to happen to him. If there was no injury or ejection there, I would imagine that number is in the 40s. So that's a good line if you get that news first.
Daniel Colpoy is asking, when Holden got DQ'd, who was the animal who went nuts for Oregon? Wanted to say that 2 TDs went and over 100 yards. Yeah,
we saw Evan Stewart come to life. He had 7 or 8 targets in week 2 or 3, and he hasn't really done much since. He had 8 targets in that game. So Stewart's the guy for sure that's going to benefit. Tez Johnson is going to get his either way. So that 3.5 or almost 3.5% edge on the under is true. I don't like the under 5% edges typically, so I would avoid it. But yeah, Stewart's the guy that'll benefit the most. Maybe why we don't see him on here unless he's behind our faces. So
all right. Yeah, Stewart, he is behind our faces, but we have him projected for 3.2 receptions for 53 yards, but he's not.
There's no lines out for him.
Yeah, no lines out for him.
Gotcha. Yeah. So kind of another team with some receiver stuff that prevents us from syncing it to subscribers is Clemson. So I would look at the pass yards because they're going to use. They don't really have any props out there for receiving or receivers, but we want to make sure that if they do, we're not blindsided.
I mean, I'll tell you, these Cade Klubnik overs, we hit them last week too.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, him and Maffa, which we'll see again, both of the overs make a ton of sense. Maffa is way more usage based. He's going to get, maybe 18 to 22 carries. He's like a 50 to 60% usage guy. Cade, he hasn't hit this number, but I think twice this season. But Virginia is one of the worst pass defense, like 114th in the country. They've given up 250 plus to, I actually took notes this time, Tom. Wake Forest, Maryland, Coastal Carolina, and Boston College. We saw Boston College last night. Thomas Castellanos, big fan of him, but if you're giving up 250 to Thomas Castellanos, that's not a good sign. So that's why the numbers really like the over, because this matchup is really good. And Kay's been much better this year, which is shocking. So like the under there or over there, over on the pass yards. And then same with Phil Maffa, if you want to look at that one. Maffa has had success hitting this number 4 times. It's a little bit unnerving. It's a little bit nerve-wracking because he runs it like 2 or 3 times, and then they put him to the sideline for 2-3 plays, and then he runs it 2-3. It's like, where's the conditioning? You're a running back, man. You got to get the conditioning up. But 106 is an aggressive number, but we like the over. The usage is there, the success is there, the defensive matchup is quality, the game script is there. So big fan of both of these overs.
We are now at 1,204 subscribers here, so we've gained 3. So hey, I'm just saying.
You might want to do a couple push-ups.
Yeah, slow and steady, but we'll get there. Shirt's coming off at 1,400, guys. Come on, let's make it happen. By the way, I will say, the show last week projections didn't necessarily do great overall, but the stuff that we talked about on the show last week definitely did well. Bringing back that Cade Klubnik over. I had a profitable weekend with the college football, but Ladson first saying here, only concern with Cade is Dabo not keeping the pedal on the metal versus Tony Elliott, who was his offensive coordinator for 2 natty titles.
I don't hate, because you should always look into any type of angle and just maybe further your decision. But I don't know. I don't think they're going to blow them out, but I don't think this is that type of game to begin with. I don't think this is one of those ones that's like, oh, are we going to get to 50 points or 60 points? Like, to me, this is like a 42-21, like a close enough game where, you can't risk it to lose, right? Clemson's already got one loss. They need to win the ACC championship to get into the playoff. Maybe a little bit of help if they have 2 losses and don't win the ACC championship. So they're going to put the pedal to the metal enough. Because style points do still matter a little bit, and naturally Virginia, it doesn't matter if there's a friendship, which there legitimately is. You got to be good, like there's a level of they have to be quality defensively, and they're not at that point right now.
Yeah. Also, Virginia's still reeling from the retirement of Tony Bennett yesterday, so that you can't underestimate that.
As a Virginia Tech fan, I love that. I mean, we have a shot now. I mean, the guy was incredible. Kudos to his career, but thank you for leaving. Thank you.
He saw that Syracuse was ranked 11th in the ACC poll and knew that he didn't want the smoke from the disrespect.
Didn't want that smoke. Yeah, he stole it up.
Yeah.
Let's look at Missouri. We have a bunch of Saturday teams we're discussing today. A lot of injuries. I mean, this was a tough week trying to crank some of these things out, hoping for different news to pop. We still don't know what's going to happen with Nate Noel. He missed the UMass game. That one to me feels, he's the running back. That one to me feels like, oh, this is UMass. We don't need him against UMass. So let's play our backups. So there's zero news out of it because we have no, and so thus we see no props. I think here the interesting prop is in the receiving yards, and I should have led with that. I'm sorry, Tom. I hate doing it, but Luther Burden is not the same guy that he was last year. I think it's 2 things. His usage isn't there. He was somewhere around 33 to 34% of targets last year for the team. This year, he's at 18%. Now, he had a little bit of injury. He missed a little bit of like a quarter or two here and there. That's a drastic difference. I mean, a huge difference. Even when he's been back and healthy, he has not seen 33% of targets, not even really close to 33% of targets. So to me, this under makes a ton of sense. Brady Cook is the other piece of this. He has really stepped back in terms of talent or production. I think Brady Cook was around 9 yards per attempt last year, and now he's closer to 7.3 yards per attempt. So we have a slight under on Brady Cook, which I think is fine. Auburn's defense is quality, not the best in the world, but certainly solid. They've had some good games, but I think the Burden one is the one to target there at mid-30s under edge. So can't release it because at some point they're going to release running back news, and we'd have to scramble, and no need to deal with that. Let's instead use it on the prop show and discuss Missouri. But yeah, I think the under there, and then if you really wanted to, Cook under is fine, but that's under that 5% threshold I typically recommend.
By the way, just so you know, because I am trying to stealth bet that Luther Burden number right now, we have moved that market, I believe, because it just dropped to 74 yards.
That's a big jump. We still like it, but it's not as it's definitely an under. We have them around, I think we have them at like 61 yards.
Yeah.
So
it's definitely still an under. Like we're still showing FanDuel here at 78. They just dropped to 74. So you might want to take, let's take a look here because we got, oh, damn. You still got Bet Online over there with the 80 burger up. If that's still up there, which I believe it should be. I'm going to check that for you guys right now. But that could definitely be a pretty good one to jam in there if you get a chance. Let me see. We're looking for Auburn. There we go. I'm going to confirm this one for you guys live on air here if this is still here. Luther Burden under 80.5. Yes, you can still get that here.
Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, he's hit that number a couple of times. One time, I believe he caught it real late in the game in the fourth quarter, because I remember looking back at the box score after the fact and being shocked that he hit the over. And I was like, wait, when did that happen? So it was late in the game. Cook has just not been as impressive. Burden's usage. He is a scheme kind of dependent player. He does have some talent. He's an NFL player for sure. But I think he's a little bit more scheme dependent than some of the different scouts and NFL people think of him. So I actually forgot a Friday night game, a Friday night team. Oklahoma State plays tonight.
Woo, the Hokies.
The Cowboys.
Cowboys. Not Hokies.
Same
I was thinking cowpokes, hoax. That's what
there we
got me.
go. There's the connection.
Yeah.
This is interesting, and we can stay on the receiving yards. This one's interesting because they are moving to Garrett Rangel, we believe, as the starting quarterback. And so this is a guy that is worse than Alan Bowman. He's got like maybe 150 to 200 passes in 3 seasons, 6 yards per target or attempt kind of guy. We actually like his over, but it's truly, what do we think they do? So they are a pass-friendly team, around 58 to 60% typically with Alan Bowman. Do they continue to do that? If so, then just the pure volume is going to be there in a Mike Gundy offense. If you think that they kind of trend maybe towards 50-50, then I think this Brennan Presley is a really good number. And I think there's another one maybe below us, behind our heads, maybe that's interesting as well.
That's all that I'm pulling up
So
right here.
they must have taken down Stribling, and Owens, his edge disappeared.
Yeah, Stribling's right up here.
Oh, there we go. So they got neutered because of this, probably because of the fact that Rangel is likely to be the starter, and it's becoming more and more confirmed. What did they have? What do we currently have lines out there for Rangel's pass yards, if you don't mind?
Let's take a look. And we've still got nothing.
Nothing popped up for him. So yeah, I think, once we hear that news confirmed, I think maybe Presley under is certainly in play. BYU on the other side of the field, there's no way I'm attempting to project this. They have a $6 million on the running back rotation, but just not worth it. Don't do it. Don't do that to yourself. This is one of those situations where it's like you're asking for crazy stuff to happen. And it's just not worth doing. I only got 2 more teams. Do we want to hit up?
Yeah, you've got 2 more teams to go, but of course we've still got some really big games on the slate this week. Like we said, Georgia versus Texas. This is going to be a good one here. Real quick, we got some chats coming in before we head to that. But Marwell says 245.9 is right for him. He's 203.5 at FanDuel. Wow.
It's truly, this is one of those ones, like, do not bet this blindly. You need to determine, are they going to pass it 60% of the time with a backup quarterback that hasn't been impressive? Which they could. It's Mike Gundy. I've seen crazier things. Or are they going to go 50-50? So if you think it's 50-50, I'd stay away. If you think it's 60-40 pass, then I would go on the over. 203 or 205 or whatever that number is not high for a quarterback that's going to probably throw it 40 times. Let's see if you hit the edit, what do we have for his attempts? Or I guess that would be completions, but still.
Yeah, but still 22 completions.
Close to 40 attempts. So that's not a hard number to get to. So it's truly on you guys. If you think it's 60-40, then bet the over. If you think it's 50-50, avoid it. That's the hard part here, is determining, what that line's going to be.
BJ saying I missed a big chunk of the video. The play's going to be posted. Unfortunately, we're not really about the plays on this show so much as we're going through all of the games, and Chris has given all of his thoughts and insights based on our projections. I would recommend just roll through, check out, go back and check out the beginning. We do talk about some good stuff there from a lot of the Friday games here. Kyle saying, hard to believe Rangel is worse than Bowman, but it's true. The best QB is hurt, for what it's worth. Zane Flores, lots of positive news around him here. And Daniel Coltboy saying, problem is they truly have no O-line. What are the Retzlar rush yards going to look like versus this defense without their second level studs?
We talk about Retzlaff. Is that what Retzlaff rush yards? I can pull that up. Don't mind that. Yeah, the thing with the Friday show is there's so much context that matters, right? Like, I would never want you to just see the Rangel line and bet it blindly, and then Oklahoma State runs it 80% of the time, right? That wouldn't be fair to anybody. We have Retzlaff at 33.5 rushing yards and 7.8 attempts.
I don't think this is actually going to show us anything because, we don't have lines up for him, or at least nothing's coming through right now. But we are also in the middle of pushing an update for NBA coming up here, so that might be messing with a couple of the lines you're seeing here. Yeah.
So Retzlaff and other QBs can be difficult because of sacks. So always, if you do hear numbers, if I ever in CFB Alpha chat talk about a rush yard number for a quarterback or attempts, just keep in mind, obviously, the volatility of the fact that, like, if he gets sacked 5 times, I mean, he's really playing uphill battle there. So just keep that in mind as you bet those QB rushes.
So be sure to pay attention to all of that. And of course, right now, I think it's time that we talk about Georgia and Texas here. That's going to be one that we are releasing to subscribers, so we aren't really going to be going through a ton of the props on screen here. However, we do have some qualitative analysis from Colin and Seth that we want to get to here because they are back for a little more for another Coach's Corner segment here with Seth. Chris, I think that we should get to that, shall we?
Let's do it. Let's see what they got for us.
All righty then. Just have to load it up, and we'll see you in a few minutes, folks.
Sports fans, Colin Sherwin alongside Seth Varnador. I am in a hotel room in Vegas. Seth is in a temporary home in Sarasota, Florida. We are still both hurricane refugees, but we are here because there is no hurricane this week, to look over two players that we think are going to be able to actually, in both cases, go over their passing totals as a prop bet this week. We will do that with some game film and some breakdowns. Seth, let's go ahead and take a look at the Georgia-Texas game. Carson Beck, number running between 264 and 272.5 right now, depending on where you look for his yardage. But one of the things that I think is very interesting that you pointed out is that Texas, in the immortal words of the Feinbaum Show, ain't played nobody, Paul. 119th right now in total with the rating of the offenses that they faced so far. So you see some good numbers from Texas, but they ain't played nobody. And that Oklahoma team they got last week in Red River is so beat up at this point. They really haven't faced a challenge. They certainly haven't faced a challenge like Georgia.
No, and you can watch Beck playing last week against Mississippi State. I think part of this is that anytime they've played teams that they had to kind of score a little bit against, his passing attempts are really high. 33 attempts against Clemson, 50 against Alabama, then here 48 against Mississippi State last week. And the Georgia offensive line does a really good job of not giving up sacks and pressures. They're one of the top in the country. Texas is also one of the top in the country. So I think alternatively that the Texas offense is going to have a pretty good game. So Georgia's going to have to score, and Beck's been able to kind of push the ball down the field. They've got some explosive guys. Texas has been really good on defense, except for against slot targets. That's kind of been their only weakness. Georgia has some guys like Arian Smith here that can play in the slot and get over the top vertically. So I think they can go over the number because I think they're going to have to if they want to win the game.
Yeah, this could turn into an actual shootout here. This should be one of the better games. First of all, it's going to be one of the best games of the year, and it seems like both teams could very well meet again in the playoff, if not the SEC championship game. But this is, I think Beck at this point has just shown that he can continually do it over and over again. And if you give him a hole, he'll take advantage. Now, everybody's going to point to that Alabama game where in the first half he was not great and had to pick up a cheap 40-yard play on the last play of the half just to get to 100. But in that second half, man, you can see what that guy can do. When everything is rolling and they are clicking, Georgia really just has weapons all over the field. Like you said, they can really block it up front. And they got a veteran guy who might make a mistake or two, but if you're looking for passing overs, turnovers aren't necessarily always the worst thing in the world because sometimes they turn and pick sixes, you get the ball right back. So yeah, I back over. So between 264, 272.5 against a less tested than you think Texas defense, I think will be interesting. We will move over to Iowa. Rocco Becht with the Iowa State Cyclones has been certainly a little bit ahead of schedule this year. As you pointed out, had a huge game against Iowa. And anytime you can put up numbers on that Iowa defense, I don't care what year it is or who they're playing, that is going to be impressive. And so Becht in his last 5 games has been really, really solid. They did get that win at Iowa as well. They, comfortable win over West Virginia last week. What are you seeing out of them that makes you think that they're going to be able to light up a Central Florida defense that certainly has had some issues?
Yeah, the part of it is the UCF defense is really bad, but going back and watching some of Iowa State's film here, they get him a lot of easy throws. So easy throws for completions here and picking up yardage off play action. They also have some throws off the RPO game for him. And then he's also able to kind of push the ball vertically as well. And these are all against Iowa in that early season game. So he's got some talent, and he's also playing one of the worst, I think, one of the really worst pass defenses in the country in UCF. They're not very good at getting to the passer. Teams have been able to throw on them. Here's TCU. Colorado, Florida. I think Florida could have named their score, but Billy Napier's more concerned about keeping his job, so he really just wanted to play really low risk in the second half. And once they kind of knew that they had him, and I think alternatively, you look at Beck this year, the only 2 games he hasn't gone over this number are games that they've won pretty comfortably and haven't had to do too much. I think in this game, UCF will be able to run the ball a little bit. Iowa State runs this tight front 3 down, 3 safety defense. Gap running is successful against that defense, and Gus loves to run gap running plays. So pulling people down, blocking. That's how you can kind of get advantage against that defense. He really likes that. So I think they'll be able to match points for a little bit. And so Beck will have to throw a little bit more than maybe some people think.
Yeah, it does seem like, the Knights really did slow the game down against the Gators, especially in the second half. Just didn't want to get doors up by 50 plus, it felt like, and they really let off the throttle, but they do generally want to go a little bit quicker. So I think the pace might be a little misleading from that, and you might see a little bit more as they try and hurry it up a little bit in the system. So that's what we've got for this week. Hopefully this will be added. Beck numbers right now about 237.5, not fully available at full markets as we tape this, but hopefully by the time you see this, you'll be able to get down some over 237-ish for Beck this week. And Seth, any closing thoughts before we head out of here?
No, I just that it's back-to-back really, really good weeks of college football. Like everyone was talking about how great last week was. You look at the slate this week, it's equally as good, especially at the top. So it should be another fun week.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? We were all worried the playoff was going to make these games uninteresting. They were just fantastic. And man, December, January are going to be unbelievable. I can't wait. It's going to be great. For Seth, I'm Colin. We will see you out there. Good luck this weekend.
The gear.
There we go. Still getting the hang of it
see-
with StreamYard and the transition there. Not the smoothest transition out of it we've ever had, but thank you so much to Seth and Colin for another great bit of insight there. And that brings us into the Colorado game, doesn't it, Chris?
Yeah, 2 Big 12 teams to talk about before we wrap up. If you want to look at Colorado pass yards to start, man.
Do they have a good quarterback? I haven't heard much about him.
What's funny is going into the season, I was not the biggest Shador fan, but we just absolutely love him this weekend. And most weekends, there was a time where we liked some unders, but we're past that. We grow as individuals, and we are welcome to change. And they just throw it so much. They also have a ton of weapons, and you have the Shador Sanders is the coach's kid effect, pushing that narrative. I've said this in the past on maybe some other outlets, but like, you want to look at options, whether it's like DraftKings, playing DFS, or gambling, right? Like, who are guys that the team wants to be successful? Like Cam Ward at Miami is one of those guys. GT, obviously, we joke about like how ridiculous those numbers are. Like, those are guys that are being pushed to the forefront for Heisman situations, for draft purposes, school recognition. Shador's definitely one of those guys with his dad and just the draft and everything that goes with it. So we love the over here. Arizona, I think their numbers are a little bit fake. They've played a couple really bad teams at the beginning of the season. It's made their numbers look better for passing yardage. They're like middle of the pack in the country, like 60, 61st. But they're trending negatively. And so I think this is not a matchup to be scared of. I like the over here. The reason why we're not releasing these to subscribers is the receiving yards. I said they have a lot of weapons, which they do. Travis Hunter's incredible. Jimmy Horn's been great. Will Shepard's great. LaJohntay Wester, I think, led the country in receiving yards, or at least in targets last year at FAU. The problem is Hunter was banged up last week. Jimmy Horn was banged up. I'm sorry, Will Shepard was banged up. There's a rumor that he was in a boot. You had Terrell Timmons, kind of like a 5th or 6th option. He's out for the week. Omarion Miller is out for the season. So a lot of like, what are we going to see now type situations. So if you want to look at the receiving yards here, we like the under on LaJohntay Wester, I believe. We have the rare. Look at this. I saw a couple of these this week. Maybe the rare double edge with Will Shepard.
So I'm going to guess, watch out with Will Shepard. My wild guess here is that Caesar's is taking the number down and it's not updated yet.
Yeah. So I do think the over is if I was to pick one, I think the over makes the most sense. It's the Travis Hunter show. He's going to get maybe 28 to 30% of targets, but these other three guys are really going to live around 17, 18% of targets. It's just kind of a mix of like who pops the big play. Wester is definitely more of a shorter pass, like a shorter A-dot, shorter route type guy. Shepard and Horn are going to be more of your bigger play options. They don't need as many. You see that with Shepard's projection, right? 4 for 64. They don't need as many targets, which is nice. So I think the overs on both those guys makes sense. They might be a little bit lower because of this kind of injury murkiness that's out there. But I think this passing attack's going to throw a bunch and be successful. And that means we do find some overs that we like in the passing attack.
I need to dig back through my bets here because I think I forgot to track one of them, but I'm pretty sure I saw an edge earlier in the week on Colorado, either on the spread or the money line that I grabbed. I got to check on that.
Okay. Which one did you take? You took Colorado?
Yeah.
Arizona's just kind of like they're kind of trending negatively downward. Ted McMillan's been great, but he's about it. I mean, he had 4 touchdowns the first week, nothing since. It's just kind of been a mess of an offensive year for them. Jed Fish goes to Washington and takes a few different pieces, and it just becomes much different. So
yeah, and plus, like you said, the coach's son effect with Shedeur Sanders. You know that Deion Sanders plays favorites with his children, Shedeur and Travis. Like those are the two guys that are going to be getting the big run. He doesn't care about players like his safeties or anyone like that. He only cares about his kids, and he wants to make sure that they get as much Heisman recognition as they can.
Exactly. Yeah. So passing overs in this Colorado game make a ton of sense. So go for it there. The last one here is another over. Let's look at Baylor pass yards.
Let's do it.
So Baylor, this is we can't release them because their running backs are just a crapshoot every week. It's just something different. But Sawyer Robertson, he's gone from the first 2 games that he really became the starter with Daquan Finn hurt, then replaced. He threw 24 and 21 passing attempts. One of those games was Colorado. It was fairly successful, but the reason why we like the over here this weekend is because the last 2 weeks we've seen that number grow to 44 and 48. We only have him at 38 attempts. So I think there's a little bit of like safety baked in there. I think they might be running more plays than we have projected, which happens. I mean, some teams will run 45 plays one week and then they'll run 70 the next, right? We're not going to adjust to 1 week. But that pass rate feels good. We're a little bit lower in terms of total attempts that we've seen recently. And they're definitely, in my opinion, becoming more air raid, more pass happy than earlier in the season when they had Daquan Finn, who's a former MAC quarterback. That's definitely a runner, not a thrower. So Sawyer Robertson, if you want an over, a little middle of the day game there for you, Sawyer Robertson over 230.5 at FanDuel is a good one.
By the way, shout out to everyone in the chat here and everyone watching because they are moving these lines quickly. Will Sawyer just jumped up another 4 yards.
Wow. Okay. Well, no pressure. That's going to be. I always find it interesting. I'm not surprised, but there's a couple of these for sure that like I go into Saturday thinking like, if I win 3 bets today, it has to be these 3. You know, like Ricky White a couple weeks back when we liked the under and it got smashed. It beat me up. It hurt me a little bit to see that happen. So I'm going to be watching it tomorrow. I think Shepard's a good play. I think Sawyer, Shedeur. I mean, these are some really good overs. We've talked a ton of unders, which is what we want to do, right? We've talked about them in the past, but it is nice to throw in a couple overs, root for positive success instead of negativity in that sense.
Exactly. And plus, hey, we're here to find it any way we can. That's what it is. By the way, Dylan real quick wants to know anything on the Nevada Fresno game. I'm going to guess that's a no there. Sorry, Dylan.
Not really. I think we technically like an over on Savion Red, but there's a lot of running back question marks that's getting in the way of that one. Malik Sherrod it looks like going to be out for Fresno State. He's their stud running back that's kind of been banged up all season, off and on. So that means Gilliam is going to be the guy in the rushing attack, but I haven't looked at what we've messed with since that change. I would imagine there's probably not a ton of lines out there for Fresno because that news wasn't really made available until about an hour or 2 ago.
Jim Robinson's really offering to move some money for people if they need it because he's saying FanDuel's letting him bet up to $38 on that Sawyer prop. If anyone wants a piece of that action there, go and talk to Jim.
Yeah, you got to
getting
buy
on
some
that
equity
line.
in that one.
Yeah.
Some people's unit sizes are too large,
Yep.
too rich for my blood.
All right, guys, that is going to do it for us here on the show today. But of course, we have NFL player props coming up in just a few minutes here. So stick around on the channel if you want to see Derek Carty and myself talking some NFL player props. I've actually layered up
I was
rather
going to
than
say it's
layering
extra
down here.
safe for work now. It's not safe for work. It's actually extra safe for work. You layered up with the hoodie.
Yeah. During that video, it was just it's gotten too cold. I actually put on pants too, so we got even safer for work there.
Thank goodness. Yeah, that could have been bad. That could have been real trouble.
Yep. All right. But for now, that is going to do it for us. Of course, one more time, I want to remind you, check out on Monday in the Unabated Discord. You do not need to be an Unabated member in order to get in the Discord here. But check out the Unabated NBA Live AMA with Justin Fan, John Rodabaugh, and Stephen Byron Keach to get you ready for the 2024 NFL season here Monday, October 21st at 4 p.m. Eastern time. Unabated.com/Discord to get you into it. We also have a link for that in the description of this video. Go all the way to the bottom of that description to find it there. But for now, for Chris, I'm Tom. That is going to do it for us. Best of luck, everybody. And let's cash some tickets. We'll see you next week, and I'll see you in just a couple minutes over on the still on the channel. Different video with Derek Carty. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. We'll see you real soon.